Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting in something really fascinating, maybe a bit mind-bending even. It's this constant, very complex chat happening inside you right now between your gut and your brain. And look, it's way beyond just simple gut feelings. We're talking about a major two-way communication network. It influences, well, pretty much everything. We've gone through a whole stack of scientific papers, reviews, basically diving deep into what they call the gut-brain axis. Our goal here is to unpack the core ideas, map out how it all connects, the science, and crucially, what it means for things like your mood, your mental health. Let's get into the essentials.
It really is fascinating. You start looking into it and you see just how interconnected everything is. The brain isn't just floating up there in isolation, right?
Yeah.
It's constantly getting input from and influenced by what's going on way down in your gut.
Okay, so let's start right there. How do these two, they seem so different, the gut and the brain. How do they actually communicate? It's got to be more than just nerves firing, surely.
Oh, much more. It's a really sophisticated system, and its bidirectional signals flow both ways. That's the gut-brain axis. Or, maybe more accurately, the microbiome gut-brain axis. Yeah. Because the trillions of tiny organisms living in your gut, the microbiota, they are absolutely central players in this whole thing. The sources we looked at, they outline several communication systems. You've got direct nerve connections. The vagus nerve is a big one, like a highway running straight from the gut to the brainstem. Then there's the endocrine system, hormones released into the blood. Your immune system is constantly relaying messages to. And you also have the enteric nervous system. It's this huge network of nerves actually in the gut wall. Sometimes people call it the second brain.
The second brain, yeah, that still blows my mind a bit. So the microbes then, they're not just passive residents, they're actually participating.
Oh, actively participating. That's really the core insight from a lot of this research. Your gut microbes act as regulators, even translators within this axis. They shape the conversation in some really powerful ways, for instance, through gut peptides. Your gut lining has these specialized cells, endocrine cells or EECs, and they release dozens of signaling molecules, often triggered by food or bacterial signals. Think of things like GLP-1, PYY, even oxytocin. Yeah, the bonding hormone, but released from gut cells influenced by microbes. These peptides can then signal the brain, maybe not always directly crossing into it, but by activating nerve endings, like on that vagus nerve.
So the bacteria are kind of nudging our gut cells, saying, hey, send the signal upstairs.
You could think of it that way, yeah. They modulate the release. But they also get involved more directly. Some bacteria, the research shows, can actually produce neurotransmitters themselves, or the precursors to them. We're talking serotonin, GABA, dopamine. The same chemicals our brain uses for signaling. Now, a lot of that gut serotonin, which bacteria influence the production of, acts locally in the gut, but it can activate the vagus nerve. So that's another route, another potential influence on brain function, maybe indirectly. They really manage the whole pool of these signaling molecules.
Wow. It's like tiny chemists down there, mixing compounds that affect our brain chemistry.
That's a great way to put it. And one of the biggest things they make are microbial metabolites. So when your gut bacteria break down stuff you eat, especially fiber, they ferment it and produce these molecules called short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs. Butyrate is a famous one, acetate propionate too. These are incredibly important. They nourish the gut lining, sure, but they also get into your bloodstream and can signal elsewhere, including potentially the brain. SCFAs can stimulate serotonin release from gut cells. They activate anti-inflammatory receptors. They have wide-ranging effects. And they also modify things like bile acids, produce other metabolites from breaking down protein. The key point is these are chemical signals made by the microbes that our body listens to.
Okay, direct chemical messages from the microbes. Got
Yeah.
it. And you mentioned the immune system earlier. Where does that fit?
Right. Well, a huge part of your immune system is actually located around your gut. It has to be to deal with everything coming through. And the microbiota are in constant communication with those immune cells. They influence the production of immune signals called cytokines. Now, if the gut environment gets inflamed, maybe due to an imbalance in microbes, those inflammatory signals can travel. There's evidence suggesting gut inflammation can contribute to low-grade inflammation in the brain. And we know that kind of neuroinflammation is increasingly linked to mood disorders like depression.
And didn't you mention something about BDNF? The brain fertilizer.
Yeah, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. It's vital for neuron growth, survival, making connections, basically brain health and plasticity. Levels are often lower in people with depression. And here's the really interesting part. Some gut bacteria, like certain species of bifidobacterium, have been shown in studies to either secrete BDNF or help our body upregulate its production. So your gut microbes could be influencing the very factors that help your brain stay healthy and resilient.
Okay, wow. So it's nerves, hormones, immune signals, these microbial chemicals, even brain growth factors. It's all deeply connected, right? So we've got a sense of how they talk. Now, the really big question. So what? How does this constant chatter actually, affect how we feel, our mood, our mental state?
Yeah, this is where it gets really compelling and honestly quite practical.
Huh.
The links between the gut microbiota and conditions like anxiety and depression are becoming much clearer. Numerous studies have found differences in the gut microbial communities of people with major depression or generalized anxiety compared to healthy controls. Now, pinpointing exactly what those differences mean functionally is still ongoing work. It's complex. Sometimes findings about overall diversity in depression, for example, are a bit inconsistent between studies. But the consistent observation is that the microbial landscape often looks different. That's a strong pattern.
So it might not just be about having fewer types of bacteria, but maybe the wrong mix, or they're doing different things.
Exactly. It's likely about the balance and the functional output. And those communication pathways we just talked about, they are the likely bridges. Take the HPA axis, for example. Your main stress response system, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals churning out cortisol. The gut microbiota seem to play a role in how this system develops and functions day to day. We know that a dysregulated HPA axis, often seen with chronic stress and high cortisol, is strongly linked to both anxiety and depression. And it's a loop, because stress itself can very quickly change your gut micropopulations. Then there's the inflammation angle again. An imbalanced microbiota, sometimes called dysbiosis, can contribute to inflammation in the gut lining. This might increase gut permeability, the leaky gut idea. If the barrier isn't as strong, bacterial bits like lipopolysaccharide or LPS can leak into the bloodstream. This can trigger a body-wide inflammatory response and potentially contribute to that low-grade neuroinflammation associated with mood issues. It's why anti-inflammatory diets are being looked at as potential tools.
Right, so gut inflammation could sort of spill over and affect the brain's inflammatory state, impacting mood.
That's a major hypothesis, yes. And then there are the more direct chemical influences, the effects on BDNF levels we mentioned, crucial for brain health, and of course the impact on neurotransmitters. The microbiota's role in managing tryptophan, the precursor for serotonin, and influencing GABA, dopamine, norepinephrine levels. These are the very chemical systems often targeted by antidepressant or anti-anxiety medications, and we can't forget the vagus nerve. Changes in vagal nerve activity or tone are linked to depression, and we know the vagus nerve is heavily influenced by signals originating in the gut, driven by microbes.
It really feels like multiple lines of evidence are pointing in the same direction. What about those animal studies you mentioned? They sounded pretty convincing.
They are quite powerful, yeah. In rodent models, you can do things you obviously can't do in humans. You can wipe out the microbiota with antibiotics, introduce specific beneficial bacteria, or even transplant fecal matter from, say, humans with depression into germ-free animals. And studies show these manipulations can actually cause anxiety-like or depressive-like behaviors in the animals, or sometimes alleviate them. It strongly suggests the microbiota aren't just correlated, they can have a causal influence.
That definitely moves beyond just seeing a link. Are we seeing similar clear-cut results in human trials, maybe using probiotics or prebiotics for mood?
Human research is definitely happening and shows promise, but the results are, well, let's say more mixed and nuanced. Some trials using specific probiotic strains, maybe in people with diagnosed depression or IBS, which often comes with anxiety or depression, have reported improvements in mood symptoms. Other studies in healthy people have sometimes shown reductions in stress hormones like cortisol after taking certain probiotics, but it's inconsistent. Not all studies find these effects. It seems very dependent on the exact bacteria used, the dose, how long people take it, and importantly, the person's own starting microbiome. So translating those neat animal findings into effective treatments for diverse humans is still a major challenge. It's definitely not as simple as take any probiotic, feel better.
That makes a lot of sense, given how unique each person's gut environment is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the science, the mood connection, the potential for things like probiotics, but also the hurdles. What does this mean for us, just day to day? If this whole conversation is happening inside, how can we, steer it in a better direction?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. Probably the biggest handle you have, the most significant factor influencing your gut microbiota composition and function, is your diet. When you look at dietary patterns across large groups of people, the contrast is often quite stark. Diets rich in whole foods, lots of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, healthy fats, think Mediterranean style, for example. These are consistently linked with a lower risk of depression. And a key reason seems to be that these diets are packed with prebiotics. These are the fibers and plant compounds, like polyphenols, that beneficial gut bacteria love to eat. They thrive on them.
So you're literally feeding the good guys in your gut with those kinds of foods.
Exactly. You're cultivating your internal garden, essentially. And conversely, what we often call Western diets, high in processed foods, sugar, unhealthy fats, red meat, low in fiber from fruits and veggies, those are associated with a higher risk of depression. Animal studies back this up, too. Feed rodents high-fat, high-sugar diets, and you see rapid changes in their microbiota, and often an increase in anxiety-like behaviors. And specific components matter, too. Omega-3s from fish, for instance. The direct mood link in studies is a bit mixed, but there's research exploring if they help partly by reducing gut inflammation and encouraging beneficial bacteria. Micronutrients are key too. Magnesium, vitamin D, B vitamins. Your microbes need them, and they also produce some vitamins themselves, like vitamin K and some B vitamins, which tie back into inflammation and mood pathways. Overall, diets rich in plant diversity tend to foster greater microbial diversity and more beneficial bacteria.
So focusing on whole, fiber-rich, plant-heavy foods seems like job number one, based on the evidence. Any other big lifestyle factors?
Stress is a huge one, as we discussed. Chronic stress really does a number on your gut microbes. Exercise also comes up in the research as being beneficial for microbial diversity and function. So stress management and movement are definitely part of the picture.
Okay, and coming back to probiotics and prebiotics as specific interventions.
Yeah, despite the mixed results in human mood trials so far, the potential is definitely there. Probiotics add beneficial bugs directly. Prebiotics feed the ones you already have. The complexity is the main thing. It's likely very strain-specific, and how well it works probably depends a lot on your individual starting point, your existing microbiome. And that leads into this really exciting area of personalized nutrition and maybe even psychobiotics in the future. The idea is that the best diet or the most effective probiotic for you might depend on your unique gut microbial profile, your enterotype maybe. So future approaches might become much more tailored, and perhaps combining dietary changes with targeted probiotics could be more powerful than either one alone.
That sounds incredibly promising. A whole new way to think about supporting mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, it's clearly not simple. What are some of the big hurdles or complexities researchers are still grappling with here?
Oh, definitely complex, and the sources are good at pointing out these nuances. First, that bidirectionality we mentioned. It makes establishing clear cause and effect really tricky. Does a poor diet lead to gut changes that increase depression risk? Or does being depressed change your eating habits and stress levels, which then alters your gut? It's likely a feedback loop, right? Both influence each other. Then you have the inconsistent results in human studies. Why does one probiotic study show an effect on anxiety, but another doesn't? It could be study design, different populations, different measurements, maybe confounding factors like medications people are taking, or even just the huge natural variation between individuals. Also, defining what a healthy microbiota actually looks like is surprisingly difficult. There's so much variation person to person. Maybe focusing on what the microbes are doing, their functional capacity, is more important than just listing the species present. And honestly, there's still vast numbers of microbes and their functions that we just don't know much about yet. And of course, there's always the translation challenge. Just because something works in a tightly controlled mouse study doesn't guarantee it will work the same way or even through the same mechanism in humans living complex lives. So yeah, while the map is getting clearer, we definitely need more research, especially robust human studies looking at the mechanisms, moving beyond just cataloging microbes to understanding the metabolites, the immune interactions, using those advanced omics tools.
Right, so a lot learned, but still plenty of frontiers to explore. It really underscores how cutting edge this field is. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've journeyed through the amazing communication network linking your gut and brain. We've seen it involves nerves, hormones, immune signals, chemicals made by your resident microbes, a whole complex web. We've touched on the strong evidence linking imbalances here to anxiety and depression, and importantly, how things like diet can be powerful tools to influence this internal conversation. Though, as we heard, it's definitely a complex picture still unfolding. For you listening, maybe the biggest takeaway is this new perspective. Your gut health and your mental health are not separate issues. They are deeply intertwined. Thinking about supporting your inner ecosystem could be a really valuable part of supporting your overall well-being. And here's a final thought, building on that idea of personalization. Imagine a future where mental health support routinely considers your unique gut microbiome. How might that kind of tailored approach, maybe specific dietary advice, maybe targeted psychobiotics, change how you think about and manage your own mental wellness? What could your personalized gut-brain support plan look like down the road? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of the gut-brain axis.